The rain had already soaked through his suit by the time he noticed her. She was lying on a narrow park bench near the edge of the street, curled inward as if trying to disappear into herself. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement, blurring everything into silver and gray, but her stillness stood out. He slowed his steps, briefcase heavy in his hand, mind still tangled in meetings and numbers and decisions that never left room for hesitation. People slept outside all the time, he told himself. He wasn't responsible for the world. And yet, something made him stop. Her shoes were worn thin, her hair clung damply to her cheeks, and her breathing was shallow but steady. She didn't look drunk or reckless, just emptied out, as if life had taken everything and forgotten to leave her strength behind. He cleared his throat softly. No response. When he spoke again, his voice sounded strange to his own ears, gentler than he was used to. Her eyes fluttered open, startled and fearful, ready to apologize before he had even said anything. "I'm not asking for money," she whispered quickly, as if she had learned to defend herself before the world could accuse her. That sentence alone unsettled him. He offered her a ride, just to get out of the rain. Somewhere warm. Somewhere safe. He expected refusal, suspicion, anger. Instead, she nodded weakly, like someone too tired to argue with fate. The drive was quiet. The city slid past the windows, and with every mile, the distance between who he was and what he was doing grew wider. He had rules. Boundaries. A carefully managed life designed to avoid complications. Yet when he unlocked the door to his large, immaculate house, he realized how empty it felt, too clean, too silent, too untouched by warmth. He gave her a blanket and let her rest on the couch, telling himself it was only for the night. Just one night. He turned off the lights and headed upstairs, convinced he could return to normal by morning. Then small footsteps echoed softly down the hallway. His daughter stood there in her pajamas, clutching her stuffed toy, her hair messy from sleep. She blinked at the unfamiliar figure curled on the couch, then looked up at him with wide, curious eyes. "Daddy," she asked softly, not afraid, just confused, "why is she sleeping here?" The question struck him harder than he expected. He knelt beside her, searching for an answer simple enough for a child yet honest enough for himself. He told her the woman was tired and needed help. His daughter nodded, accepting it without judgment, the way children often do when love comes more naturally than fear. As he tucked his daughter back into bed, he realized something had shifted. The woman sleeping downstairs wasn't just a stranger seeking shelter. She was a mirror reflecting the compassion he had buried beneath years of survival and success. And as the rain continued to fall outside, his quiet house held something new, uncertainty, yes, but also the fragile beginning of a story none of them had planned. Morning arrived softly, as if the house itself was afraid to disturb what had happened the night before. Pale sunlight slipped through the curtains and stretched across the living room floor, touching the edge of the couch where the woman slept. She stirred suddenly, sitting upright with panic in her eyes, as though she had forgotten where she was. For a brief moment, she looked ready to run. She smoothed her hair with trembling fingers and whispered apologies to the empty room, already rehearsing the words she would say before being asked to leave. She had learned not to assume kindness lasted longer than a night. As she stood, trying to fold the blanket neatly the way guests do when they know they don't belong, a small voice broke the silence. "Good morning." The little girl stood at the doorway, holding a bowl almost too big for her hands. Cereal sloshed slightly with every careful step she took. "Daddy says breakfast helps sad people," she said proudly, as if this were an important rule of the world. The woman froze, emotion rising so quickly she had to look away. No one had made her breakfast in years. The father watched from the kitchen, unseen for a moment, coffee forgotten in his hand. He observed the way his daughter placed the bowl down gently, the way she smiled without hesitation, without fear. Children didn't see failures or past mistakes. They saw faces, voices, and whether someone needed kindness. They sat together at the table, sunlight warming the space between them. Conversation came slowly, carefully, like steps on thin ice. The woman spoke in fragments at first: lost job, unpaid rent, a relationship that had promised safety and delivered silence. She never blamed anyone. She never asked for anything. That restraint unsettled him more than desperation ever could. His daughter asked questions that made his chest ache. Simple ones. Honest ones. Did you sleep cold? Do you like cartoons? Will you eat with us again? Each question landed like a small knock on a locked door inside him, loosening something he hadn't realized was sealed shut. He saw how the woman's shoulders relaxed as the morning went on, how her voice steadied, how laughter, quiet and surprised, escaped her once or twice. It filled the house in a way no expensive furniture ever had. This wasn't chaos. This wasn't danger. This was humanity. Still, when the woman stood and thanked him, saying she would leave before causing trouble, he felt an unexpected weight in his chest. He nodded, because logic told him that was the right ending. Temporary kindness. Clean boundaries. But as he watched his daughter cling to the woman's hand, as if afraid the morning itself might take her away, he realized something deeply unsettling and deeply true. The woman hadn't walked into their home to disrupt their lives. She had walked in to remind them what living actually felt like. By evening, the house felt different, quieter, yet fuller, as though the walls themselves were listening. The woman stood near the front door with her small bag in hand, her movements careful and restrained, like someone afraid to leave fingerprints behind. She thanked him again, her voice steady but her eyes betraying how much strength it took to walk away from warmth once you had felt it. The little girl didn't understand goodbyes shaped by fear. She sat on the floor, lining up her toys, watching every movement. When the woman reached for the door handle, the child suddenly stood and rushed forward, wrapping her arms around the woman's legs. The gesture was instinctive, unplanned, and devastating in its honesty. "Will you disappear too?" the little girl asked softly. The words froze the room. The father felt the breath leave his lungs. He hadn't realized how deeply his daughter carried the absence of her mother, how every farewell sounded the same to her: permanent, final, unbearable. The woman knelt down immediately, eyes shining, unsure how to answer a question that heavy. She looked up at him then, not pleading, not demanding, just searching. In that moment, he understood that wealth had never protected his daughter from loneliness, and control had never protected him from regret. Safety wasn't in locked doors or strict rules. It was in showing up. He knelt beside them, his voice unsteady but honest. He told his daughter that some people come into our lives unexpectedly, and sometimes, if we're brave enough, we ask them to stay. The little girl wiped her eyes with her sleeve and nodded, trusting him completely. He turned to the woman and offered something more frightening than charity: choice. Not obligation. Not rescue. Time. A place to breathe. A place to heal. She hesitated, tears finally spilling, because being invited to stay was harder than being asked to leave. Staying meant hoping again. Days didn't turn perfect overnight. Healing never does. But it began quietly, in shared dinners, in bedtime stories where 3 shadows stretched across the wall instead of 2, in mornings where laughter replaced silence. The house learned new rhythms, and so did their hearts. The little girl stopped watching doors so closely. The woman started sleeping through the night. And the man, once defined by numbers and distance, discovered that the greatest investment he had ever made was letting love enter his carefully guarded world. Sometimes, family doesn't arrive the way you expect. Sometimes, it arrives because you finally open the door.